Hello, my AP students. Hope everybody is doing well after the long weekend and hope you enjoyed. I figured I'd post the rundown from last week today because you had a few days over a long weekend to forget some stuff. And also you have a test this week, so I figured it was better to wait until Tuesday anyways to post this. It's a little bit more relevant. So I'll go through what we did last week. Obviously, we have a test upcoming here on Friday, 25 multiple choice questions, which are timed. Those are going to be timed. I'm going to let you know at 25 minutes, but you have 30 minutes to do them. And then an LEQ as well to get into that for the last part of your test. So anyways, what did we do last week? We spent a lot of time on the Constitution of the United States and the first few years of the United States as a country, going through the Articles of Confederation all the way to the establishment of the Constitution, and then to our first president, George Washington, and his legacy as well. So starting with the Constitution, we know that it is a stark difference from the Articles of Confederation, which were very weak in terms of what the government could do. So we had meetings at like the Annapolis Convention and the Philadelphia Convention to debate whether or not we should get rid of the Articles of Confederation or just simply amend them. Obviously, we decided to get rid of it, and that which leads to a fight between our Federalists and our Anti-Federalists at the Constitutional Convention. Remember, the big focus on AP isn't necessarily what's in the Constitution. Those clauses are important. I'll talk about them in a minute. But it's more about how did we get to a Constitution, and then how do we hold up that Constitution in the years after we write it. So we have some compromises that lead to the writing of the Constitution between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Obviously, the most pressing one, the one that you should know the most, is the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Compromise, because we're the Constitution state. Our buddy Roger Sherman decided to take the Virginia Plan, which was to give states power based on representation, and combine it with the New Jersey Plan, which was to give states equal representation regardless of size, and form a bicameral legislature, 2 houses, 2 chambers, right? Each with powers over one another. So that's the Great Compromise that satisfies Federalists and Anti-Federalists. Furthermore, we have the 3/5 Compromise, which again is going to count slaves as 3/5 of a person. I know, absolutely terrible thing that we wrote down. And that's for representation in population. So the southern states get that essentially. Your Anti-Federalists, your more so your more state-powered people are going to support that. And our northern states, which are mostly Federalists, get in exchange for the 3/5 Compromise the ability to eliminate slavery 20 years after the practice. We also had the Electoral College, which again divides up state versus federal power, and we also have our clauses. The Commerce Clause, which gives the federal government power to regulate trade between the states. The Necessary and Proper Clause, also known as the Elastic Clause. The government can do whatever is necessary and proper for it to function. And I'm missing one off the top of my head. Don't get mad at me. Commerce Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause, which states that federal laws have power over state laws. We also looked at checks and balances and the different branches. So the big focus, again, for the Constitution are those compromises and Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. Our Anti-Federalists eventually, by the way, become at the beginning of Unit 4 the Democratic Republicans as a political party. So that's just looking ahead a little bit, but that's where we're going next. So that was the important points with the Constitution and the Articles of Confederation. Also the Bill of Rights. And our first 10 amendments to the Constitution and what those do. Remember, the 9th Amendment is also an example of a compromise because the 9th Amendment to the Constitution brings together the Federalists and Anti-Federalists on the Bill of Rights. Remember, the issue was we shouldn't be writing down all the rights that people have. It's too finite of a list. It needs to be a longer list. All right, so on to President Washington. So after the Constitution gets passed, we have a lot more central power, a lot more federal government power, and one of those things is establishing the office of President of the United States. George Washington, also known as Mr. Precedent, right, because he sets all the precedents for president, like the 4-year term, two terms, sets a lot of different stuff as President of the United States, including Hamilton's financial plan, which is a really important one as well, which again shows compromises between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. We're going to pass Hamilton's plan, which is to consolidate debt, raise revenue through a tax, the whiskey tax, the revenue. Remember, we're going to have to raise revenue. The Whiskey Rebellion, which is, an example of the federal government using its power to put down a rebellion, not the state governments like in Shays' Rebellion. It's the federal government putting that down. That's very important. And then lastly, establishing a Bank of the United States, which Hamilton is able to pass because of the necessary and proper clause, the elastic clause. He argues that the bank is necessary for the United States to function. Therefore, it should be a thing. Lastly, we looked at founders of the country. Our different founding fathers, the important ones we said to highlight were Thomas Jefferson, writer of the Declaration of Independence, James Madison, writer of the Constitution, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams, who spent a lot of time in France during the American Revolution. John Adams, his wife, is the one who has the "Remember the Ladies" quote and when we're writing the Constitution. And then Elbridge Gerry, of course. Elbridge Gerry is an anti-federalist who did not support the passing of the Constitution for a couple reasons, mostly for a Bill of Rights. But remember, his entire document is going to be on your test that we did a HIP exercise on, Elbridge Gerry's reasoning for why he didn't want to have the Constitution. But that's pretty much it. That's what we covered and what we went through. Your test is on Friday, so please let me know if anybody has any questions. I kept this one to 6 minutes. You should be proud of me.